So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs or the important news items in that day's current affairs in a very short span of time within 20 minutes. The reason why we are covering this lecture in 20 minutes or within 20 minutes or approximately 20 minutes is very simple. The reason is that you are civil services aspirants. And as civil services aspirants, your time is of the essence, your time is very important, so I don't want you guys to waste your time. But covering current affairs is also very important because I don't need to tell you this. But current affairs forms the most important portion of your syllabus, whether it's UPSC or any other state civil services examination. So, I have brought this lecture series called Daily News in Shorts so that you cover your current affairs on a daily basis and side by side you don't waste your time that much. Now, how do we do that? Well, from that day's newspaper or from a particular day's newspaper, I shortlist the important news items that are important from the perspective of civil services examination. And we focus all our energies, we focus all our attention on those shortlisted topics only. We don't walk around the newspaper, we don't cover each and every topic of the newspaper. We focus all our attention on those few topics that have bbeen shortlisted because those are the topics that are important from the perspective of civil services examination. All right. Now, today we are going to be covering September 28, 2024's newspaper or important news items. And the topics that we should focus on are as following. So, here are today's topics. Okay. Number one is, what are NSQ drugs? Our drug regulator, an organization in India that takes care of the quality of drugs or medicines being circulated, called Central Drug Standards Control Organization, every month releases a list of drugs called NSQ drugs. So, what are these NSQ drugs? We'll talk about this. Then, recently, USA has imposed tariff barriers on Chinese goods. So, USA has put taxes, high taxes on Chinese goods to save its economy from China Shock 2.0. Now, what is this China Shock 2.0? How is US going to save itself from China Shock 2.0? And how is India already dealing with this shock? We'll talk about this. Then, recently a controversy erupted between the judges of Supreme Court and High Court. So, we'll talk about the constitutional provisions regarding Supreme Court and High Court and how can Supreme Court judges reprimand High Court judges who are committing a mistake. All right. And in the end, we'll talk about air quality in Delhi. For the first time since June, air quality in Delhi or NCR region has slipped to poor category. And already various government agencies, including Delhi government, has come out with a action plan to deal with the air pollution cases. So we'll talk about this. The air quality in Delhi, we'll talk about the causes behind poor air quality in Delhi and how is the government responding against it. Okay? All right. So we'll focus our attention on these four topics. Let's start with topic number one. What are NSQ drugs? First of all, you need to know the full form of NSQ. So NSQ stands for not of standard quality. Okay, not of standard quality. I mean, the medicines that are classified as NSQ drugs are not of standard quality. So what has happened? Why are NSQ drugs in the news? So samples of around 50 medicines, including some common ones like paracetamol medicines, metformin medicines, which are given to diabetes patients, pantoprazole medicine, which are given for acidity, they have been found to be spurious or not of standard quality. Now, these findings came out of a routine exercise by the regulator. And who is the regulator of drugs in India? CDSCO, in which medicine samples are tested randomly for quality. So what happens is every month, CDSO and various state regulators conduct a random test of all the drugs being sold in the market. Okay? And after those tests, those drugs which fail those tests are put on a list. Okay? And that list is made public by CDSO every month. So remember, every month CDSO comes out with a list which contains the list of medicines which are not of good quality. Okay? So every month, remember this frequency, month. Regulator, Central Drug Standard Control Organization, releases a list of drugs that are found to be not of standard quality during checks. Okay. Now, whenever CDSO conducts these tests, three types of bad drugs emerge. Look, those drugs which pass the test, well, they are all right. They are good. They are good to be prescribed. But there are certain drugs who fail those tests. And the drugs that fail those tests are of three types. Okay, so three types of failed drugs. Number one category is of spurious drugs. Now, spurious drugs are those drugs which are manufactured by local manufacturers, but they package it in a branded packaging. Okay, what I mean to say is that these are essentially fake drugs. Okay, let's suppose I am manufacturing paracetamol, but I put my paracetamol tablet in the packaging of Crocin. So people would think that they are buying Crocin, but actually, Crocin didn't manufacture that paracetamol tablet. I manufactured it, but I am faking the packaging. Okay, and this misleads people. So these are known as spurious drugs. Then there are poor quality drugs, those drugs which are of not of standard quality. Drugs that may contain a faulty description or may not dissolve in a proper way or may have a lesser quantity of ingredients. Okay, drugs that fail quality tests. They are not spurious, they are not bad, but they fail some quality checks. Okay, these are called NSQ drugs. And then they are adulterated drugs. These are also dangerous drugs. These are those drugs which contain harmful contaminants. Okay, adulteration, which contain all the medicinal ingredients, but they also contain certain chemicals which are harmful for the human body. Okay, contaminants. So these are called adulterated drugs. All right. So the list published by CDSCO every month contains the list of all these three types of medicines. All right. That's about it. Just remember what CDSO is. It is Central Drug Standard Control Organization. It takes care of all the drugs being circulated in India, whether they are Indian manufactured drugs or imported drugs. CDSO is responsible for the quality of those medicines. Okay. And also remember, CDSO comes under Ministry of Health, but that is easy to remember. That's not that bit of a challenge. Okay. All right. Now let's move on to our second news item, which is China Shock 2.0. Now, why China Shock 2.0 was in the news? A steep hike in tariffs or import duties, basically, including a 100% duty on electric vehicles by US on imports from China, kicked in Friday to tackle the problem of China Shock 2.0. So basically, USA has said that any drug, sorry, not drug, any item, any electric vehicle being imported from China would have to pay a tax of 100%, which means that let's suppose an electric vehicle costs $1,000, okay, in China. When it comes to USA levies $1,000 tax on it. So the final price of that electric vehicle in USA becomes $2,000. Okay, it becomes expensive for people to buy Chinese goods, and that is why the imports of Chinese goods declines. So USA has put 100% duty on electric vehicles, 50% duty on solar cells, and 25% duty on steel, aluminium, EV batteries, and some minerals. Okay, and USA is doing that to tackle the problem of China Shock 2.0. Now, to understand China Shock 2.0, you need to know what China Shock 1.0 was, or what was China Shock. Okay, in 2001, China joined the WTO. And when China joined WTO, then China was eligible for market access of different countries of the world. Now, different countries have to allow Chinese goods to enter their market. Okay, earlier some countries had blocked Chinese goods in their market. Now, since China joined WTO, China started selling those goods into the markets of different countries. Okay, and China was able to sell those goods at very cheap prices because China had abundant labor, so China's labor costs were low. These Chinese goods were heavily subsidized, so China was able to sell these goods at very cheap prices. And because they were so cheap, that people in those countries started buying Chinese goods, and Chinese imports or imports from China increased in almost all the countries because these were so cheap goods. That is why Chinese goods flooded global markets, flooded markets of all the countries, almost all the countries. Now, is that a bad thing? Yes, it was a bad thing because the manufacturers of those countries were facing stiff competition from Chinese goods. They were manufacturing electric vehicles at $1,000, okay, or let's suppose $1,500. But China was able to sell those electric vehicles at $1,000. So China was able to sell its goods at very cheap price, which actually outcompeted the manufacturers of those very countries. Now, this was known as China Shock 1. Okay. But people responded, countries responded, and somehow they were able to manage this. Now, in 2024 or since 2023, another wave of goods exports by China have been flooding domestic markets of different countries. This is known as China Shock 2.0. India is suffering from this. Various other countries are suffering from this, and USA was suffering from this. That is why USA has imposed such high tariffs or taxes on these goods. Okay, I hope you understood what China shock means. It is the influx of Chinese goods in domestic markets of different countries at very cheap prices, so cheap that the local manufacturers of those countries are outcompeted. All right, now what are the types of anti-subsidy measures or what are the types of taxes that governments can impose to tackle this shock, China shock? Okay, these are known as anti-subsidy measures. So countries can levy anti-dumping duty. It is a type of import duty only on Chinese goods. It is a protectionist tariff that a domestic government imposes on foreign imports that it believes are priced below fair market value. Okay, so USA has imposed anti-dumping duty. Countries can impose countervailing duty also, tariffs levied on imported goods to offset subsidies made to producers of these goods in exporting countries. You see, you know why China is able to sell goods so cheap? Look, an electric vehicle an electric vehicle in China costs around $1,000. Okay, it requires $1,000 to make this electric vehicle. But Chinese government is giving these manufacturers heavy subsidies. Like Chinese government is giving, let's suppose, $500 of subsidies to these people who are manufacturing $1,000 cars. So when Chinese government is giving money to these manufacturers, actual cost of production for these manufacturers becomes $500. While the rest of the world is manufacturing electric vehicle at $1,000 per unit, Chinese manufacturers are able to manufacture at $500 per unit because Chinese government is taking care of the rest of $500. And that is why Chinese goods are so cheap. It is because of this subsidy provided by Chinese government. So to counteract this subsidy, governments impose a duty, a tax. So let's suppose India will impose a $500 tax on Chinese goods. Now Chinese goods would become $500 more expensive, and that would actually nullify the impact of subsidy. These are countervailing duties. Okay, and both are permissible under WTO. So WTO allows countries to levy anti-dumping duty, countervailing duty, but after due investigation. Okay, all right. Now let's move on to our third news item, which is Supreme Court versus High Court. Now, what has happened? Why have I written versus over here? A bench of 5 senior-most Supreme Court judges expressed serious concern about comments made by Karnataka High Court Justice V. Sirishananda. Okay, so basically, Karnataka High Court Judge Justice V. Sirishananda actually made a comment regarding a particular locality in Bangalore. So there was a particular locality in Bangalore which was Muslim dominated, and Justice V. Sirishananda actually called it mini Pakistan. Okay, plus in another judgment he made some objectionable comments against a female lawyer. Now these are the things that a high court judge shouldn't do, but this was done. Now, against this action of Justice V. Sirishananda, a 5 senior-most judge bench of Supreme Court judges expressed serious concern. Since then, the judge V. Sirishananda has tendered an apology, so SC has backed out of its action. Supreme Court has backed out of its action. Okay, only after he tendered an apology. But had he not given an apology, then what could the Supreme Court judge would have done? Can Supreme Court judges do anything against the erring High Court judges? Can they do anything? What would have the Supreme Court judge done or Supreme Court judges done against V. Sirishananda? What are the constitutional provisions? Look, I'll tell you. Supreme Court and High Court judges or Supreme Court and High Courts of different states are known as constitutional courts. Okay? And to ensure that judges in these courts are independent and free from fear, the Constitution has made it very difficult to remove these judges, both Supreme Court and High Court. Removal or reprimanding action against district court judges is very easy. But as far as Supreme Court and High Court judges are concerned, well, it is very difficult to remove them. In fact, the Constitution has given a provision or the Constitution of India has given a detailed way through which judges of Supreme Court and High Court can be removed. Okay, as per Article 124, Clause 4 of the Constitution is concerned, judges of both Supreme Court and High Court can only be removed by the president. Okay, but president cannot unilaterally remove these judges. The president should get an address, or the president should get the sanction of both houses of parliament. Okay, so if you want to remove a judge of a Supreme Court or a High Court, then a resolution should be passed in both houses of the parliament, and it cannot be passed with a simple majority. For a resolution to pass in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, two-third votes are required. Two-third members present and voting should vote in favor of removing that judge. Only then that resolution shall be deemed passed by Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Plus, the number of votes should be also more than 50% of the total membership. Okay, when both houses give that address, pass that resolution, then a special address is given to president, and then president can release the order of a removal of a judge. Now, this process is so difficult that so far no judge has been impeached or no judge has been removed. Okay, this is known as the impeachment process. Plus, the Constitution clearly mentions the grounds for removal of a judge. These resolutions shall be passed in the House only if it is proved that the judge was guilty of misbehavior or incapacity. Only then the houses are also allowed to pass a resolution. So it is very difficult to remove a judge. Now, if it is very difficult to remove a judge of a high court, then if a high court judge does something wrong, what can the Supreme Court judge do? This makes it difficult for Supreme Court to reprimand an erring high court judge. They cannot do anything. Okay? Because removal of judges is very, very difficult. So because of these constitutional limitations, it's difficult for Supreme Court to punish for erring high court judges. Okay? But still, Supreme Court has found two ways. Number one is contempt of court. Article 129 and 142 says that Supreme Court can punish anyone for contempt of itself. Okay, and sometimes to discipline these erring judges, Supreme Court passes contempt of court proceedings. Supreme Court can also transfer these judges of High Court. Supreme Court Collegium, you know what Collegium is? 5 senior most judges of the Supreme Court, including CJI, recommends the transfer of High Court judges, and the President has to follow that recommendation. So they can punish them by transferring them, or they can pass contempt of court proceedings. So these are the two alternative ways through which a High Court judge can be disciplined. But still, Supreme Court judges cannot remove High Court judges because the Constitution clearly mentions that High Court judges can only be removed, or Supreme Court judges can only be removed as per the process mentioned in Article 124, Clause 4. And this makes it very difficult. Alright? Okay. And now let's move on to topic number 4, which is air quality in Delhi. The air quality in Delhi slipped into poor category as per air quality index. So air quality index actually gives a score. So Delhi's score was between 200 to 300, and if a city score is between 200 to 300, their air pollution levels are categorized as poor. Okay, signaling the imminent arrival of North India's bad air season. Now, North India's bad air season means winter season in North India is considered a bad air season because air pollution rises during winter months, especially during winter months. Now, to tackle this problem, Commission for Air Quality Management, which issues order to combat pollution in NCR, National Capital Region, under Graded Response Action Plan, said it was watching the situation. So, Graded Response Action Plan is an action plan to tackle air pollution. Okay, why it is called graded? Because the action plan or the actions to tackle air pollution are based on the levels of air pollution. Okay, that is why it is graded. Now, why is winter or why are winters considered to be bad air season in North India? First of all, let's talk about the reasons behind high air pollution in North India in general, but Delhi in particular. First of all, the issue of stubble burning. In fact, this year, the cases of stubble burning in Punjab and Haryana have risen as compared to last year. So this would increase air pollution in Delhi. Then, other causes are biomass burning for cooking, vehicular emissions, cars, burning of diesel and petrol in cars, waste burning, industrial activity. These also cause high pollution. But these things are there, not stubble burning, but other causes are there even in summer months also. So why are winter months so vulnerable to high air pollution? The reason is that after monsoon, the air becomes stagnant. It's not moving. I mean, the wind is not blowing that hard. Okay. And there is a phenomena called temperature inversion. During winter months or during post monsoon months, temperature inversion happens. What is temperature inversion? That the closer to the ground, layer of air closer to the ground is cold, whereas layers of air above the ground are hot. Now this creates a problem because if the air closer to the ground is hotter than upper layers, then hot air would rise. Okay, and if there are any pollutants in that hot air, they would also rise and disperse. But if the bottom layer is cold and the upper layers are hot, then this cold air would not rise. It won't rise, and that is why pollutants in this cold air, they won't also rise and disperse. Plus, wind is also not blowing, so pollutants get stuck in one particular region, and Delhi produces a lot of pollutants. Stubble burning is there in Punjab and Haryana, and because of this, air pollution happens, especially in winter months, post-monsoon months. So this is the geographical phenomena responsible for bad air season during winters. Okay. Now, what sort of solutions are being proposed? So, Delhi government has given a 21-point winter action plan. It includes drones to monitor pollution, anti-smog guns that would remove smog, artificial rain, which is also known as cloud seeding. So, what happens is a plane is launched into the sky, and that plane actually sprays some small particles into the sky. Those particles are such that water vapor condenses on those particles, it forms clouds, and then rain falls. And because of rainfall, well, pollutants get dispersed. Okay. But what are the issues with cloud seeding? It is not a nice thing, cloud seeding. The water vapor used in the process would have naturally precipitated elsewhere. So that rain would have been descended elsewhere. But to prevent Delhi's air pollution, you are artificially creating conditions so that water vapor descends to Delhi. So that would lead to drought-like conditions in other areas. Plus the chemicals used, what you spray. Generally, you spray silver iodide or sulfur particles. These silver iodide particles have long-term bad impact on soil and water health. Plus smog towers that would reduce smog. These are basically giant air purifiers in Delhi. They don't have a wider impact, they have a very local impact. Plus they consume a lot of energy also. So these are also not that beneficial. Okay, but these are the proposed solutions by Delhi government. All right. And on that note, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. Though it would add more value if you revise these current affairs discussed in this lecture. And how to revise them? Download our PDF file. PDF file for this lecture, where everything discussed in this lecture is given in a written form for you to revise. Now, where can you download this PDF file? From our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below. So click on that link, go to our Telegram channel, follow it, and download the PDF for not just this lecture, but all the other lectures featuring on our YouTube channel. All right. On that note, I'll be signing off. Thank you so much, everyone.